In 1884, a young Irishman, Joseph Scriven, had just graduated college and was heading home to go marry his sweetheart. As he traveled to go meet her the day before their wedding, he came upon this creek where he sees his beautiful bride-to-be laying dead under the water. She had fallen off of her horse and was killed instantly. Sometime later, Joseph moved to Canada, where he eventually fell in love again, only to experience complete devastation once more when his new bride-to-be became sick and passed away just a couple of weeks before their wedding. The following year, he wrote this poem to his mother back in Ireland that described this deep friendship that had cultivated between him and Jesus during those difficult times. You see, instead of thinking that God was punishing him, he instead chose to cherish God's friendship through all that heartache. A friendship he said he discovered through prayer and worship. The poem that he wrote was later to become the well-known hymn, "What a Friend We Have in Jesus." Another man, attorney Horacio Spafford, had a wonderful family with a wife and 4 daughters. And in 1871, the Great Chicago Fire destroyed most of his business. And then just 2 years later, his wife and daughters were aboard an ocean liner when it was struck by another vessel, and all 4 of his daughters drowned. As he journeyed to go be with his wife, they had to cross over the area where the ship had sunk. And as he reflected in those moments, and over the course of the rest of that journey, was when he wrote the popular hymn, "It Is Well." And then there's Job. Job, the wealthiest and most righteous man of his time, who in one day lost everything. As he's being told that his 500 oxen and donkeys were stolen and that the servants who attend to them were all killed, somebody else runs up to tell him that fire had fallen from heaven and killed all 7,000 of his sheep, as well as the servants who attended to them. And while he's still talking, somebody else runs up to tell him that all 3,000 of his camels had been taken, and the servants that attend to them were all killed. And before this guy can even finish telling him about the camels, somebody else runs up to tell him that all of his children, 7 sons and 3 daughters, were all killed when the house that they were in fell in on them. And Job's response to all of this was to worship. It says that he tore his robe, shaved his head, fell to the ground, and worshiped God. In all of these tragic stories, we see the same response, which is one of worship. You know, I'll never forget the week that my brother died in 2012. You see, I was the one to receive the news first. So I had to be the one to make that horrific phone call to my mom. I spent the next week with her helping to prepare for the funeral. And man, if it wasn't for Jesus and my worship of him during that time, I would not have had the strength to be her strength through it all. I put everything I had in him. I trusted him completely. I mean, I had to rely on him to just simply breathe. In worship, he strengthened me. And in prayer, he comforted me. He was the one who got us through it all, and I will forever be grateful. You know, we live in a fallen world, and sometimes life is just unfair. But it's what we do in those dark moments that can show this broken world what unwavering faithfulness in our Heavenly Father looks like. You know, we can't always understand the whys, why bad things have to happen. But one thing that we desperately need to understand is why we need to worship. Worship brings us to the feet of Jesus, and he promises to be our comfort, to be our strength, to be our hope, to be our joy. And he promises that he will never abandon us. There's a line from one of my favorite songs that says, "Because when the night's at its darkest, that's when the light hits the hardest." And man, does that ring so true. In our darkest moments, we worship because that is what brings us back into the light, and the darkness cannot live in the light. In those moments when you feel broken, or if you are just in a dark place and you don't know what to do, you don't know what to say, you don't know how to get out of it, worship. Just simply worship him. And worship for you could be through music, it could be through writing, it could be through prayer, or just thanking him for who he is and what he has already done for you. Let worship be your response to whatever lies ahead of you, and I can promise you that he will respond to your worship and that he will get you through it because he loves you so much. Our God is so good, and he is constantly reaching for you. So reach back, worship him. I love you, church.